Yo, what's up, everyone? It's your boy Jack Oates to go. You either know or you don't. Thank you guys so much for clicking on whatever you clicked on to get to this video, to watch it, or listen to it, rather. This video should be really exciting, but before we get into anything, if you are on maybe your second or third video of mine and you like what you're hearing, definitely consider hitting the subscribe button, as I do have a goal to reach 3.5k subs on this channel by the end of November of this year. So if you could help me out, that'd be really great. But if you're not really digging the channel, no harm, no foul. Just don't hit subscribe or anything like that. There's so many other cool YouTubers out there that are doing amazing, amazing things. So with that out the way, today we're going to talk about Thagirion, which is going to be... This has got to be my favorite clip within the Tree of Knowledge, by far. Just for how dynamic it is. This specific sphere on the tree is literally connected to every other sphere, which is what makes this special. And I've said this in other videos before, but this is kind of talking about the tree as a whole, but you don't really realize it until you see the sphere and then how it's related to the sphere that's above it, which is a pseudo Saphira called Dots, which we talk about a whole lot on the channel. But the entire tree is one of the first depictions of a heliocentric modeled galaxy. So at the very center of this, that's connected to everything, you have the sun. And then behind the sun, you have the abyss. And, I do talk about this a bit, but behind the sun, or the very center of, any galaxy, scientists do feel like black holes are what truly generate, and keep our galaxy alive. So it's just very interesting when you look at it in that way. Now, in the way of how Tabata has been representing this sphere as far as on the Sephirotic level, I think has been really well crafted. The person who corresponds to the sphere in Black Clover, not Thagirion, but Tiferet on the light side, is Ril/Lyra. They have paint and scribble magic. So this is really cool because I'm doing like a huge reread on Black Clover right now, and I'm at the part where they're at the Royal Knight's exam, and we finally get a little bit of a backstory on Ril, and he says that his magic is used to recreate attributes. That's specifically what it says, and I think that's really cool, because when you look at the ideas of the trees are supposed to represent, well, each sphere represents different aspects of the singular God. And so when you have them all coming together in this one sphere, you get this like messianistic character. And it makes sense that Ril is able to recreate fire, every element, and then some, because he's limited to his mind, but they're all channeling their power through him. So I think the way Tabata just made Lyra and Ril have paint and scribble magic was pretty expert, in my opinion, especially for the Sephiroth. It's very hard to come up with good ideas for like magic attributes when the Sephiroth, like I've said many times, is comprised of concepts more than it is comprised of things like matter. That is where the devils end up coming into play. They have more physical roles rather than conceptual and spiritual roles. So I think Tabata did an amazing job making Ril and Lyra that role in the story. But we're going to talk about Thagirion today. That's just kind of my take on it, my surface level take. We've talked about Thagirion a lot, but this is going to be from Dr. Thomas Carlson's perspective, and he doesn't quite use Crowley's clip out like I've been using, so his is slightly off the mark from Crowley's, but it's still very good as far as representation goes. So Thagirion, when I read this, you're not going to really be missing a whole lot when we go from this description to what Crowley uses. The only big difference here is that Crowley actually incorporates Kiowa and Belphegor in Thagirion, whereas in Mathers, which is what Dr. Carlson uses, only uses Belphegor. Now, I've got some theories already out there talking about Thagirion, and this mostly stems around why Dante and Morris have the same possession marks on their foreheads. And there's the theory that one is Kiowa, the other one is Belphegor, and the devil that we see that talks to Dante during his fight with Asta is the fusion of both. Explaining why he's got 4 wings and 4 horns, just like Lilith and Nama did when they fused. I feel like that theory makes a lot of sense. Okay, you guys, I legit, there's no way this is happening right now. I legit went through 13 minutes of recording this video, and then I stopped it because I was like, no, they're making way too much noise out there. Let me just wait till it passes by, then I'll restart it. You would not believe these assholes came right back around and started making more noise. You hear that? It's like how many times do you need to take out the trash right there? There's only one dumpster. This is absolutely insane. I'm sorry, guys. I apologize. I'm gonna wait until they pass again, and then I'm gonna keep going. Alright, I'm pretty sure they left. I've never seen that before. Dude, I see him. I still hear him. Okay. Just to give you guys a lay of the land. So I live in a condo, right? Gated community. So like, I live on the ground floor, where all the noise is, and there's a dumpster for one of the complexes. Kind of like, I don't know, that's like a good 50 yards. So they come around and they take the trash. You guys know how that works. But like, sometimes it takes a bit. It's a little bit narrow for their trucks. So you hear all the backup sounds and stuff like that. But it never, in my living here, have I ever seen them make a second lap to come back around. I've never seen that. And I heard them pass all the way. I don't know what's going on out there. So I apologize. We're kind of have to bear through some of the distant beeping sounds, but I think they're done being extremely noisy right now. Anyway, so I was talking about Thagirion, Dante, and Morris having Belphegor and Kiowa, making them the 2 beasts that reside in Thagirion. Now, in some of my more recent theories, having the triad, well, it's not really recent theories, it's just more refined theory now, because I said this almost a year ago, that the triad was going to be including Thagirion and then the 2 clips above it, but I have changed the devils since, but the clips have not changed, but it would be Thagirion, the Agael, and the Cetariel. So in Crowley's clip out, they have Aishet Zenonim, which is a form of Lilith, as the princess of the Cetariel, which is a very confusing relationship, because Crowley says that he has Lucifuge in the clip out below her, whereas Mathers has Lucifuge in the Cetariel, ruling it. But Crowley says, even though Lucifuge is in the clip out below Aishet, he actually does still rule the Cetariel. So we have this complicated relationship between those two, which kind of goes into like this whole Magicula seeming to be trying to bypass Lucifero's eye. So that's pretty interesting. I think Crowley's clip-out is the correct one to use when going for this type of story, if it even turns out right. Then right across from Aishet from the Cetariel is the Agael, who's got the fallen angel Samael. And the two of them, went the whole distance. They went through all 3 or 4 bases, however many bases you have. Maybe for demons they have 7, who knows, or 666 bases together. And they created offspring. Now, they made a lot of offspring, but there were only a couple of noteworthy ones. Asmodeus being one of them, and then the highest ranking child is actually Belphegor Kiowa. So this goes back to the video that I made a little while ago talking about how the triad, the triad devils can actually possibly be family, which I think would be pretty cool to incorporate, adding a little bit more depth to devils and them not just being these singular beings that have no stakes in the game whatsoever, rather than their own lives. So I think it would just add a cool dynamic as well as follow the lore, which is cool. But anyway, let's get into reading. There should be no more like huge giant sounds coming from outside my window. So let's enjoy what Dr. Carlson has to say. So he says the 6th clipotic level, or the 5th, counting from levels of initiation, is called Thagirion, which means dispute or judicial process. This can be interpreted in several ways, sometimes as a religious judicial process in which Satan is the prosecutor on God's behalf, or as the place where the judgment of God and his administration of justice are located. Apart from numerous mythological interpretations, the name of the Qliphoth denote their antinomian nature that works against the laws of the bright side. All Qliphoth bear pejorative names since they act as the antitheses to the present order. Since the Sephiroth of the light idealized unity, the shadow side is associated with disunity. This also explains the signification of dispute in the name Thagirion. I think this is best personified with Keter versus Thamael, where Keter represents the crown of God, the singular aspect of God, unity, and the Thamael are the twin gods, or the opposing gods that represent the duality of God. So I think it's just a good way. This tree flips itself inside and out so many times, so it's very tough to explain at points and pretty easy to interpret at others. So just some things you got to wrap your head around. Thagirion is the central Qliphoth on the, I'm going to butcher this, Ha-Elan Ha-Hizon, the Qliphotic outer tree. This Qliphoth is the shadow side of Tiferet on the Sephiroth. Both spheres correspond to the child or the offspring, and Tiferet is associated with Christ and messianic characters, while Thagirion is associated with the Antichrist and the Beast 666. Now, I like that he words it in the way that he says both spheres correspond to the child or the offspring. This means that this does still correspond to what Crowley is going for, that Aishet and Samael birthed an offspring that ended up being the ruler of Thagirion, Kiowa and Belphegor in this sense. On the Sephiroth, he does explain that it holds messianic attributes. So this is a lot like Ril and Lyra, where I'm not saying that these guys are like Jesus, but in the sense of that they are able to create these things through their imagination. This is anything having to do with creating things from nothing is a feat that usually only gods have the capability of doing. So it kind of goes along with what I was saying in the beginning, how I feel like Jesus Tabata did a really good job representing this idea, and the fact that Rayla and Lyra are children still. Just goes right along with what Dr. Carlson is saying here. The former characters preach salvation through them. Jesus explains in the Bible that he is the only way to salvation, something that is questioned by the latter, who emphasizes man's possibility to save himself. Tiferet and Thagirion are both associated with different human characters who channel the force from this level, such as secret masters or prophets. Since this level is the central sphere on the tree, people who are on this level are able to mediate between the worlds above and the worlds below. Strong personalities can be associated with either of the two levels depending on the preference of the general public. To a Muslim, then, Muhammad is a Tiferet character. Of course, Muslims do not generally use the symbolism, while he is viewed by some Christians as the Antichrist, and thus as a Thagirion character. In the early stages of his career, Hitler was viewed as something of a messiah who would save Germany. At that stage, he assumed a Tiferet role, but after the war he was viewed as the beast personified, and is now one of the most popular characters to portray as the Antichrist. Nero, Genghis Khan, Attila the Hun, and many other powerful men have been called the Antichrist and were characters on which people projected the shadow. So what Carlson is saying here is that these men have reached the mode of Thagirion. Now, I've talked about this in one video, but just as a refresher, when we're talking about these spheres, we're talking about stages of life. We all start out at Malkuth, this most physical form and most basic form of living. And as you ascend the tree, the next level is reaching the mode of Yesod, then the mode of Netzach, and so on. So he's not saying these guys are literally the beast or the messiahs, but they have reached this mode of existence to where they can be conflated as such. Philosophers and mystics like Netzach, Crowley, and Gurdjieff have, on more valid grounds, been connected with Thagirion, since they have preached that man can save himself, and they have also used a Thagirion-related symbolic language. An individual can channel Thagirion and be a mouthpiece for the lore of the shadow side. For all adepts, this level means illumination. Both Tiferet and Thagirion belong to the solar sphere or the mental level, and here the magician comes into contact with his or her higher self or lower self, depending on how one is holding the map. So let's stop there for a minute. So he says for all adepts, this level means illumination. Now, we talked about this a little bit, but we've got a lot of new stuff, so let's really talk. Let's look at Dante and why I've been saying that his devil is not Lucifer, but instead Belphegor. But in this case, probably at that point a fusion of Belphegor and Kiowa, where he reaches this 100% form, and we start seeing light coming out of the dark parts of his body, right? This is representing illumination, and a lot of people are still running with the fact that he's Lucifero because, Lucifer is the bearer of light, the bringer of light. While I see the point, this does not represent Lucifer in the slightest. And I believe Dr. Carlson kind of goes into this a little bit more, just talking about what illumination means in this sphere specifically. But I've already told you guys before that this sphere is correspondent to the black sun. Remember, on the Sephiroth, these are the light planetary celestial bodies, where Yesod is the moon, where the Gamaliel, which is the correspondent to Yesod, is the dark side of the moon. So Tiferet on the Sephiroth is the sun, while Thagirion is the black sun, where the light is on the inside in the blackness that is kept from coming out, or hindered in a way. So this is what we physically see with Dante. And I think that is the best representation too. Now, if we're just talking about lore-wise and just thematically, it doesn't make sense that he's got Lucifer. Lucifer would not reside in the Satariel or in that triad. it would be Lucifuge Rofocal, who was still not the bearer of light or the light bringer. His name is actually literally means the one who flees from light, which is what represents, the Satariel. Now, if you're fleeing from light, you wouldn't necessarily have light emitting from any part of your being. That kind of contradicts the whole meaning of the name. So what I see through Tabata's writing as for Dante, I don't see that he's got Lucifero. I see that he has Belphegor. And we're going to keep reading, and maybe you guys will understand why I think the way I do. And hopefully it turns out this way, because this is like one of my bigger theories. But anyway, both Tifra and Thagirion belong to the solar sphere or the mental level, and here the magician comes into contact with his or her higher self, or lower self, depending on how one is holding the map. The magician encounters his daemon, who on the bright side takes the shape of the holy guardian angel, a term inspired by the holy magic of Bremelin. On the dark side, the daemon takes the shape of the beast, or totem animal. The bright side is characterized by an intellectual illumination, while the dark side leads to an instinctive illumination in which force... I don't know, I just had a random thought while I read this. So, he says on the dark side, the daemon takes the shape of the beast, right? Or the totem animal. And what he means by that, a totem animal, is pretty much like a familiar, like witches have. Because while he's talking about the Kabbalah and the dark side of it, this is also closely related to the occult and witchcraft in general. So, by totem animal, he just means, a familiar, like I said. But I also just got the picture of, like, what if, like, Dante's devils are completely just fucking with him. Like, imagine what Asta and Liabe did when they tried doing the union initially, where Asta has Liabe climb up on his shoulders and they just make a literal totem union. That would be absolutely absurd if that's what that was going on with Dante. He would be like the butt of every single joke if he got duped like that. I don't know. I feel like that'd be really, really funny if they did. Especially if they were, these, what I'm theorizing to be two devils. These devils are like children, and they're pulling one over on Dante, who's supposed to be the face of the Spade Kingdom in this whole movement. So I just thought that'd be kind of funny, and also in a way well written, where like even a guy like Dante gets the wool pulled over his eyes in the worst way. Doesn't even have Lucifero. Just has like these two children demons. So I don't know. Just a thought. That's funny. Anyway, the bright side is characterized by an intellectual illumination, while the dark side leads to an instinctive illumination in which force, vision, and action are united. Very important sentence right there. The dark side leads to instinctive illumination. Now, remember, Dante's all about instincts. He's at a very surface level of being, where all the cardinal sins exist within him. Things like lust and jealousy, and gluttony. All those things exist within Dante. So that's instinctive illumination right there. And then he goes on to say, in which force, vision, and action are united. Now, force, having this gravity magic, literal force here. But, you can also say that his vision is also skewed in this sense, that he's got a false representation of what beauty is. And I talk a lot about that in my very first video, trying to debunk the triad. And you guys should definitely watch that, because I think that was pretty much on the nose, and I had no idea how on the nose it really was until a year later. So, anyway, on the bright side, one reaches an intellectual distance to the here and now, while the dark side leads to a complete presence in the here and now. Exactly what Dante is. He's here and now. On some levels of the initiatory path, the dark and the bright side are united, and on the solar level, the magician can experience the unity between the holy guardian and the beast. The magician's daemon unites both the light and the darkness within, just like Dante is, like the Gnostic god Abraxas, who's associated with this level. Now, this is Abraxas I've been looking into a whole lot, and it's very hard for me to replace Abraxas with who we have as Magicula, who does fit the bill, but there are also some aspects where she just quite doesn't fit it as well, where I don't feel comfortable saying she is Abraxas, but it is a good possibility. And then we have what Dr. Carlson says here, is that Abraxas is associated with this level. Now, Abraxas is a Qliphothic pathway, if we get very, very technical. So while it is associated with this level, it is not the ruler of this level. So just something to think about. To go on, in alchemy, one has reached the state of the yellow diamond on this level called citrinitas. The solar sphere also corresponds to topaz and gold in alchemy. Keter and Thaumael is represented by gold in a higher red form. I do talk about these forms in some of my last videos, and also made a pretty in-depth thread about Asta going through these phases. So just take a look at those. Many adepts experience strong feelings of lust when reaching the sun sphere, Dante. Here they become one with the goals and ideas they have strived for, still Dante. The adept experiences a completion within his whole being, or the self, as it is often called in psychological terminology, Dante. This is heaven for the religious, or hell for those who would rather go there. Dante would rather go to hell, or bring hell to him. The Bodhi level, or the Satori in Eastern mysticism. For black magicians, the ascent to this level leads to the feeling of total power, Dante, but not in the naive and illusory form that can be experienced now and again on the previous levels. For the white magician, a feeling of total benevolence arises. Both of these states are too self-sufficient and have become a trap for numerous spiritual wanderers. The sun level and the mental level are only halfway on the initiatory path. This sphere can, in simple terminology, be designated a level on which the adept experiences everything of himself in its full capacity and experiences his whole being with the destructive and creative sides in balance. But beyond this level, the higher levels begin. The star sphere, or the transcendental sphere, which could be called a level where the adept becomes more than himself, is the level to which the assiduous magician strives. Tiferet corresponds to the sun in its bright form, while Thagirion corresponds to the black sun. The black sun represents the sun in its inner form, where it shines inside man and over the hidden Qliphothic worlds. Just like I was just saying how the light coming from Dante's 100% form is coming from within. It's illuminating the otherwise dark parts of the spiritual self. The common sun is the outer sun that shines over the mundane world. The black sun corresponds to the god Set in Egyptian mythology, while the mundane sun corresponds to his twin Horus. In Nordic mythology, Balder is occasionally associated with the common sun, while the black sun corresponds to either Loki or Balder's blind brother Hoder. Now, I do believe I read half of this chapter to you guys in a previous video, but a lot of you guys are new, so we're going through it again with a little bit more context, though. But for those of you that aren't aware, Dr. Carlson is renowned for having some cutting-edge ideas on cross lore and how the Kabbalah... It's no secret that the Kabbalah was pretty much intertwined in so many different philosophies, Egyptian philosophies being the main one, and then Greek Norse lore is closely behind it. So what Carlson's endeavored to do was to connect these things fully, and I believe he completely broke the code as far as I'm concerned, by even connecting runes and Nordic gods to spheres within the Qliphoth as well as on the Sephiroth. But here we talk about how the black sun corresponds to either Loki or Balder's blind brother Hoder, and if we take Crowley's Qliphoth, where he's got Kiowa and Belphegor, and we even take the cross lore, if he's saying one brother is blind, who do we have that's blind that shares the same possession mark as Dante? Morris. So I mean, it's the connections are there. So at the very least, even if it turns out wrong, I don't think I'll feel too bad, even if you guys start dragging me, because the connections are 100% there. So let's keep moving. One can find aspects of Hodor that suggest that he is a form of Odin, and Odin is also associated with the Black Sun. Thagirion is the son of the shadow side, which can be interpreted as the sun in the underworld, which in myth is personified by Balder in Hell, Ra in Amenti, or by the solar gods in the kingdom of death. The sun is the symbol of the complete self, or the self which can reach consciousness and illumination only in the underworld. Before man has confronted his own death in darker aspects, he lives screened off from major parts of himself. By facing one's death and by entering the dark path, can man reach illumination and absolute knowledge about himself. This is illustrated by the Egyptian god Khepera, who embodies the principle of existence and becoming. Khepera carries the sun down to the underworld, where he is reborn and as his own offspring. Now, this is something that we talked about in the last video, talking about this Draconian path, where the mage, the whole goal is to rebirth themselves and pretty much be their own creator, while on the path of becoming everything else's creator, which is kind of why I have Asta not really having a father, and Lucida going through this complicated birth process. As we know that no living person can ever mate with Lucida the way she was. So if that is the case, I think the interaction that Dante and Asta had was wildly important, as Dante is on this path and he's realizing himself and what human nature is to him, where Asta, in possibly a past life, has already descended the Qliphoth and rebirthed himself, and is starting to come into his own being again. Them having this conversation about what human nature truly is definitely more important than we gave it credit for, if this turns out to be true. And Dante is still somewhat a neophyte in the eyes of a tried and true Draconian mage like Asta might be. The sun that he carries represents his self. We're talking about Khepera, if we forgot. And only in the underworld can the god create himself. And in an ancient Egyptian text, Khepera says, "I am Khepera, the one who has created himself." The Black Sun, or the Thagirion principle, is not merely the sun in the underworld, but a force that has a more independent relation to the self. The Black Sun is a principle that shines on the self during its journey into the unconscious. The Black Sun is the inner or central sun that generates illumination and divine force in man. We can also find depictions of an outer Black Sun. In that case, we are discussing legends about a world inside the earth, a world that is illuminated by its own sun, called the Black Sun. Now, this goes into straight up just like Middle Earth lore, which is where all those things like hobbits and Lord of the Rings stuff live, which is very interesting too, because if we consider things like Middle Earth, where you would find things like dwarves, and dwarves are known to live inside of mountains and underground, and if they have what's considered a Black Sun, and we go back to the video where I talked about Dr. Carlson creating the triad, where Hel, Jormungandr, and Fenrir are the triad of destruction, and how I told you guys how Fenrir, in Thomas's views, is demonic and related to the lowest triad on the Qliphotic tree, and it's sealed inside Charmy, who's half dwarf. Then we can definitely get some interesting stuff from this series. So it looks like Tabata is taking all of this lore and is going literally everywhere with it, anywhere he can possibly go, giving us the surface level, the deeper level, and another perspective on it. But we'll see as it goes on. But it looks like Tabata is really going for all these ideas. These legends were recreated by the esoteric writer Sir Bulwer Lytton in his Vril stories, which depict a people who are living inside the earth and are in possession of a force called Vril. If you haven't watched the video where I talk about Dante's devil's power being Vril as opposed to actual gravity magic, please watch it. But this is like a very short snippet of what it is. Another speculation regarding an outer black sun claims that there's a black sun in the middle of the universe, or alternatively in the center of our Milky Way galaxy, which radiates through the universe with a light that to man is perceived as an empty darkness. It is said to generate the dark matter that fills the universe. The black sun is the generation behind the forces that in occult texts are called Vril, Odd, the world Kundalini, or the dragon force. Now, we talked about Vril, and it's funny that they say the black sun is the generator of all this, and if you are a Berserk fan, they use Odd as a power system in there, it's Berserk is just a blatant take at the path of the dragon. It's a very surface level, not saying that it's basic or anything, but because like even the surface level concepts of this are wild to even begin writing, much less illustrating. But Berserk is just like this is what the Draconian path is, and this is what's described, and very by the book, actually. Whereas Tabata is illustrating a more I wanted to say subtle, but it is definitely a more in-depth look at what is required to go through these steps. And he's shonenized it and everything, which I feel is a much harder feat to do, to represent these ideas and not be as blatant as Berserk was, or is, has been. So I think Tabata's doing a wild job. But like I said, definitely go back and watch that Vril video. It might make you rethink what Dante's devil is doing. Vril is it's a vague power, but very absolute, and it's very tough to explain. But I do try my best with the sources that I have in that video. So definitely watch it. Thagirion and the Black Sun can be described as the principles that channel those forces of chaos from outside the universe, which flow into this universe both as life-giving and death-bringing forces. We talk about in that video how Vril has both of those qualities. Thagirion corresponds to the beast of the Book of Revelation. This force can be found in Old Norse mythology as the Fenrir's wolf, and Thagirion is ruled by the demon Belphegor in the Goetic Kabbalah. The horn god, in his many shapes, is a personification of the solar energy that beams from Thagirion. The sun demon Sorath originates from Thagirion and has the same numerical value as the beast of the Apocalypse, which is 666. The number 666 is the number of the Black Sun and carries the key to the formula Shemhamfarash and the number 72, which both correspond to the secret name of God and the 72 demons in the Goetic magic. And therein ends the chapter of Thagirion. Now, there's so much more, believe it or not, to Thagirion, but I do believe I've covered pretty much everything there is to cover in the past. So just take a look down the channel and see what you find. This clip art is so dynamic, and as you can probably tell by now, it is super hard to imagine writing just like off the top of your head, and take what we have and try putting into the perspective that I've tried making for you, as far as Dante and Morris as well being associated with the sphere, and just kind of appreciate what Tabata's doing. He's he's really going for it, you guys. And like I said, I'll keep saying it. He's done an amazing job at doing this. But I think this is the most clear and cut and obvious clip that he has represented thus far. And I cannot wait to see what this seal and these devils inside of it look like and what they can actually do. Because, like I said, if we have a fused demon and they are Belphegor and Kiowa, freaking balling, like Tabata's going. I do have another theory on why Morris has that possession marking, but I have to wait until I record my second part of a collab with Broku later this week before I roll it out, because it's going to contain a theory that him and I have been working on for a few weeks now, and I don't want to spoil it. So, but Morris has nothing to do with our collab, but there are things and people and beings that do go hand in hand with it, and I don't want to ruin it. So be on the lookout. If you haven't for some reason, most of you should be subscribed to Broku. Like, most of you probably came from his channel already. But if for whatever reason you're not subscribed to Broku, type in BROKU in the little search tab. He's going to come up. It's Broku. He's got Jujutsu Kaisen content on there. He's got Black Clover up the ass. Got crazy theories on there. For those that don't know, Broku's the reason why I even started this. So, and the reason why I am just about as, I won't say like successful, like I'm like breaking numbers here, but more successful than I thought I'd be. Definitely due to him. I first created a Twitter because I wanted to contact Broku. I was like, hey, I got some theories, and I like randomly hit him up, and started making the videos, and he started rocking with them, and it's been history since then. So by supporting me, you are supporting Broku, and I would definitely appreciate if you guys went and subscribed to him. If, like I said, you are somehow not already subscribed to him, dude's literally go and super supportive. So. Yeah, anyway, I don't want to make this video any longer. We're about to hit almost an hour on this video. Like I said, this is one of the more dynamic clip-ons, and these other chapters aren't as long, and there's a lot less to put into them. So I don't expect the other ones to be as wildly long as this. So hopefully you take your time listening to this. But other than that, thank you guys for watching all the way through. My favorite show... cartoon rather, is SpongeBob SquarePants. So if you made it this far, let me know what my favorite show is. Just put hashtag SpongeBob or anything to do, hashtag anything related to SpongeBob. That way I know you made it through. So if I see your comment and you say something or ask a question that I know I addressed in this, and you don't have that hashtag in there, I'm just straight up not going to respond. That's just about the size of it. Because that's what I'm starting to get, especially on Twitter too. So just let me know that you watched it to this point, and let me know what you thought about this. I'm very curious as to how you guys are taking this. This is stuff that is not usually publicly talked about, and you guys have been taking it really well so far. So I do really appreciate you guys. But anyway, I will see you guys in the next video. You guys stay safe, stay out the way. This has been Jackos to go. You either know or you don't.